Review of Raw for Monday night. Download a Tuesday morning from the Fight Network site. It's Review of Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
It's Review of Raw. I'm John Pollock. He is Wai Ting. And what a historic edition of Raw we are about to review from the Dunkin' Donuts Center.
Why is it historic?
Because this is the last time that you are going to get to sample every single donut. Imagine. They're going to cut them in half. Boston cream and chocolate glazed will no longer be together on Monday nights. They will be separate on different nights. And only 4 times a year will you get a plethora of every Danish donut and muffin together.
I mean, I don't think that's a terrible business idea. You make them limited, so now I have to
They
go
should
on
do
Mondays.
that. Tim Hortons, it's like, oh, it's Tuesday. It's not Boston cream day. I'm going to have to come back tomorrow.
Well, there is the Nutella donut and the Stanley Cup donut, which are
Those are
only
disgusting.
limited. What?
They come in like those things that you buy a Big Mac in. Like they have these crates to put them in to give you.
Like a box?
Yeah.
That makes them more special.
Those look disgusting.
Have you had one?
I'm not a big donut guy to begin with, but those things,
No,
they
they're-
don't look like there's anything but just empty calories in there.
You admitted to not being a donut guy. Why would I listen to this review of
I'll eat the occasional
donuts?
donut, but those things, those hockey-sized things, they look terrible.
It's because they're black. Because they're supposed to look like hockey pucks.
No, there's the...
But they're delicious on the inside, aren't they? Whatever. They're donuts.
Well, have you had one?
I don't know.
No, you haven't even had one. You just love to argue. That's all you like to do. You're getting used to the demands of this job. Are you ready to chat about Raw from my favorite arena?
Yes.
Providence, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
The site of the 1994 Royal Rumble. It was in that city. I don't think it was in this building.
Wow.
I don't think they were big enough for this building.
Yeah.
I don't think this building was even around in 94. Okay. But it was in 2016, and we had a massive pyro display to start the show as Michael Cole announces a sellout tonight. And then Stephanie is out to start the show, and we get the rules of the draft. And we already went over the rules, so I've got your feelings on them. And Stephanie is immediately...
Not on the TV version we have.
Well, you should be listening to the podcast as well. So if you're in TV land, you're missing out on the whole thing. This is like you tuning in the Raw and you missed the pre-show on the network.
Okay.
You got to be on the Live Audio Wrestling Network so you know everything, so you're up to date.
All right.
Or else you're going to miss things.
So we went over the rules, yes.
So Stephanie is interrupted instantly by Shane McMahon, who comes out. God bless Shane McMahon, but this man nearly died during this segment. He at least lost 10 pounds.
He was sweating all night.
This was worse than Brock's sweat at its worst.
Well, we know he's been doing some traveling, so perhaps he's just a bit more tan than usual.
I was concerned for his well-being.
Maybe it's really hot.
Stephanie was concerned.
Well, they're also both keyed as the commissioners of their respective brands.
Correct. Yes. So that's 2 weeks in a row that we have these titles.
Oh, did they have them last week?
No, I'm saying that last week we got the switch over from COOs to commissioners.
Oh, yes.
And this week they were still commissioners. Yes. So Tuesday night they could be CFOs for all we know. So anyway, Shane says how Stephanie wakes up every day wishing that she had testicles and says that if she was a guy, then when she slapped him last week, there would have been ramifications. Basically saying, I would have beat the hell out of you, but you're a woman. So you escaped Shane's wrath. So Stephanie says how lady balls are bigger than testicles. And Shane responded on behalf of everybody by stating, gross. And the reason for this natural use of weird terminology, was for Stephanie's book that is called Lady Balls. What an awful name.
That's actually the name of the book?
That's the name of her book. Lady Balls. They're going to try and get that term over.
This is her autobiography?
Yes, this is the book she's writing.
Lady Balls.
Lady Balls. She will be on all these talk shows promoting Lady Balls.
Yeah, could you see that being on like the New York Times bestseller? I mean, you have all these serious novels.
What would the male equivalent of that be?
Balls.
No, if a male was trying to...
Oh, I don't know, man tits?
What a stupid name. It almost
Lady
projects
balls, yeah.
like balls are somehow superior. Like a male's genitalia is somehow what a woman aspires to achieve.
I mean, I suppose that's the intent. I mean, because women don't have balls.
I'm aware.
They have ovaries.
It's true. So that would be if Shane writes a book.
Oh, right, yes.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Man ovaries, got it.
Stephanie mentions the roaring success that is the Cruiserweight Classic, bringing up its great reception, including the new podcast CW Scene with Braden Harrington and Wei Ting. Yes. Stephanie downloading and listening it to a number of times. Says that she loves it, and Raw is going to have a Cruiserweight division, which will be exclusive to Raw.
Yeah, big announcement.
Yes, and says that Raw has the advantage by being a 3-hour show.
I beg to differ.
Well, it does have the advantage in terms of how these rules have been laid out, because Raw will get the first pick. Why? Because it is. And Raw will also get 3 picks for each 2 of SmackDown's picks as a way to bolster the Raw roster, which is the longer show, which I can understand. This is where Shane was. This guy looked like Frosty the Snowman in August in the middle of this ring. He was orange and he was melting. He was melting in the middle of Providence. Holy mackerel. Like, this was just concerning.
It probably gets really hot in there.
Like, Stephanie looked completely fine. So you can't tell me these lights were just so damn bright.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what was going on here. The crowd was chanting yes. And then Stephanie is the first one to introduce her general manager, and it is Mick Foley, as Stephanie danced to his theme music.
What did you think of this choice?
I mean, I threw out his name on Sunday night. I saw it as a possibility. But I have to say that he brought it up later, the fact that I think Bryan was one everyone was anticipating, and they went nuts for him. And Foley got a good reaction. I wouldn't say a great reaction, and I think a lot of people were anticipating a Bischoff, a Heyman, someone of that level. And Mick Foley hasn't been off television to the fact that you're going to get that nostalgia pop and that he's back on TV. He has a good presence on television, so this didn't feel like a really out-of-the-box pick, but someone that I'm interested to see in the role, and interesting how they're going with 2 babyface general managers, as we'll get to with the SmackDown GM. But first, Foley compared the new era to the Attitude Era and says how the climate tonight reminds him of the Monday Night War, and how when he heard about this brand split, there was an ember that grew into a 5-alarm fire, which apparently is what Shane McMahon was standing next to, and mentions helping to put the final nail into the coffin of WCW and is going to take Raw to the future and beyond. And Shane says he respects Foley. They shake hands. And before we get into Shane's announcement for his general manager, what did you think of Mick Foley as the GM pick?
I certainly thought it was a bit of a weird choice because, I think maybe what I'm a little bit disappointed by is that we didn't get that much reasoning for Stephanie, who is very much a heel on the show, picking somebody who has been, a longtime babyface like Mick Foley. And also, I suppose I was anticipating a bit more of a difference between the SmackDown GM and the Raw GM. And the way I see it, I feel like Foley and Daniel Bryan are kind of similar characters.
Very similar, just different generations.
Yeah, both are the suit-like underdog baby faces. And exactly, 2 characters of a different generation. So I didn't really expect Foley, nor am I really that big of a fan of the way, he was kind of portraying his reign as sort of, he's the representative of the Attitude Era, and he hopes to essentially turn Raw back to the glory days of their Attitude Era self.
Which ended, I guess, based on your timeline, probably 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Shane says that now that Foley's the GM, he's kind of interested in Raw, and he introduces his GM as someone that broke glass ceilings and was an underdog, and brings out Daniel Bryan, who got an unbelievable reaction. Mm-hmm. This crowd was so happy to see this man. Stephanie, during this segment, we've talked about it before, where she has this knack for just having to get in her one-liners, and I think just liking to improv out there. It was so glaring during this segment that she was just tripping over everybody's lines and just trying to get in her stuff. I thought it was it was so annoying during this segment, and I've been noticing it more and more, just her just cutting people off mid-sentence and getting in her jokes that don't even register with the audience because I don't think they even hear it properly. It's really become this annoying pet peeve of mine with Stephanie.
Yeah, I think she's a tremendous performer overall, and I'm sure she carries that confidence, and I'm sure people have been congratulating her and giving her that praise. But I feel like she's almost
It's to the detriment of the segment here.
A little too confident in that she feels she has the freedom now to be able to just kind of say a line here and there. And I'm all for things that are not scripted, but here I felt like she was almost taking over the segments and interrupting the flow of the other people that were speaking. And, it almost seemed like she was a little drunk.
Did you notice a moment where it looked like Mick forgot his line?
I don't know. No, not really. I didn't notice.
I couldn't tell if he was actually missing his line or if it was just supposed to be something, because he just is in the middle of his speech when he had first come out, and he puts the mic down and he makes this awkward look at Stephanie, who then just whispers into his ear, and then he proceeds with the promo. And I don't know if that was just supposed to be some exchange that they have or if he just like blanked or something. It was strange. Anyway, this was a long reception for Daniel Bryan, and he talks about being the underdog here and Shane convincing him to come back, and brings up beating Triple H at WrestleMania in 2014 and how all the people helped him and said they are going to help beat Raw each and every week. Stephanie calls SmackDown a B-plus show ran by a B-plus player. And then Stephanie brings up Shane being nervous, and that's why he's sweating so much. And Shane says how Stephanie had to marry Hunter to stay relevant, and Shane then leads Bryan with a yes chant to end the segment.
I thought Bryan's promo was good. I thought it was better than Foley's. I thought it was a speech that, how he described SmackDown as the underdog, just like he is. I thought it was a speech that made more sense and seemed like to make him seem like a reasonable fit, more so than Foley's did.
Yeah, I don't have an opposing view to the idea of these two babyface general managers, because the idea that if Stephanie were to pick another heel, I don't know if I could just take that anymore. The double heel authority figure, again, whether it's a Hunter or Bischoff or anybody. And conversely, Shane having a heel GM, and then you have those two that are almost at odds, which you'd get to.
I agree.
I don't mind the start. And you have two good promos here with these guys.
I think the product is very much aware of kind of the frustrations of the audience and the heel general manager thing. And, they did somewhat explain Stephanie's reasoning for hiring Foley, and Foley being self-aware that he might be manipulated by Stephanie too. I guess I would have just liked to have seen a bit of hinting of that here.
Yeah, it was an odd fit with Stephanie picking Foley. Each and every week, it's your chance to win a t-shirt from ProWrestlingTees.com. Simply answer the trivia question and tweet @LawRadio for your chance to win each and every Thursday. The show started with Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens taking on Sami Zayn and Cesaro. Zayn had an insert promo promoting his match with Owens this Sunday. JBL essentially told you these two are getting drafted to different shows. No GM in their right mind would draft these two together, considering the bad blood. This will be their last match on Sunday, which I think is probably what you're going to see.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Yeah.
Owens is in. He hit a neck breaker to Zayn before the commercial. Jericho had the advantage on him. Eventually, Cesaro got the tag to come in and hit repeated uppercuts to Jericho. Cuts off Owens, was going back and forth with uppercuts to those two. Zayn and Owens came in for their Fry Takayama spot. There was a big clothesline in the corner by Owens, and then the pop-up powerbomb got countered with Zayn hitting a drop kick in midair. Cesaro's in, hit a high cross off the top. Cesaro's swing was blocked. Walls got countered. Then Cesaro got the swing and ran Jericho into Owens. And then Zayn came in. He used this Greco-Roman knuckle lock into a tornado DDT to Owens. Jericho went for the roll-up. It was reversed into a cradle, and Zayn pinned Jericho.
I thought a pretty good match, but it was kind of had some strange start and stop reactions throughout. I'd say the crowd overall tonight wasn't necessarily a hot crowd, wasn't necessarily a quiet crowd either, but they kind of had their ups and downs. And watching this, I think I felt a little sad to see that, I feel like the mid-card roster right now in the company is one of the strongest that it's ever had, and it's a little sad to see, matches like this kind of no longer happen anymore. But they will have a lot of great talent coming in as well.
Well, the hope would be that these guys that are mid-card players are going to be more key talents on each brand by being split. I think that like this kind of group, these 4 guys, I feel I've seen this tag match a million times. So I think that having some space and allowing them, like, I mean, Kevin Owens to me is somebody that's just, he's here in this spot and he's been in this spot for months at this point, and I think he could really use a break from Zayn and a more concerted singles emphasis.
Cesaro.
A lot of them, yeah. Cesaro, I could say the exact same. Brian is busy scouting the Golden Truth backstage, and then he runs into Titus and Jack Swagger in his glasses. And I think Titus was about to tell him, hey, funniest thing happened when you retired, when I was on the ramp. And then Stephanie comes up to Brian and says she's surprised to see him back, makes fun of Brian and Bree at their home growing peaches, and compares him to the little doll from Chucky. And Brian brings up how she used to call him Goatface, and now he's Chucky. He likes that name and says that Stephanie has been ruining Raw.
This was a really strange and pretty awful segment. I don't know how much of this was scripted, but certainly I would say Brian didn't come across as well as Stephanie did. Not to say Stephanie came across well either. She again did the thing where she talked over Brian and wouldn't let him kind of finish his lines. But in the end of it, it was nobody looked better for being a part of this segment. So I thought it was totally unnecessary.
How did you like Daniel Bryan on the show compared to how he was presented last Wednesday?
On the Cruiserweight,
totally serious
classic?
Daniel Bryan.
They're they're completely different characters, and they're totally different presentations of pro wrestling, in my opinion. So I can't really compare the two. He's a commentator on that one, and he's playing an on-air role here. This was kind of the same Daniel Bryan you saw during his babyface run at the tail end of his career. He's not necessarily my favorite on-air personality and favorite on-air speaker, but he certainly has great identification with the crowd, and I do think he's the right choice for it. So how he'll perform as the GM of SmackDown, I think largely depends on how that show is going to be presented and what the tone of that show is.
Are we going to get Stephanie at the future CWC tapings doing her scouting for the Cruiserweight division?
I doubt it. I don't think so.
Alberto Del Rio against Darren Young with The Miz and Maurice on commentary. Del Rio missed an enziguri in the corner. Miz noted how his lawyers were able to keep Miz and Maurice together after the draft. And then Darren Young's new in-ring character, he just does all of Bob Backlund's big spots. He did the big belly-to-belly, the atomic drop. Then he knocked Miz off the apron. There was a roll-up by Del Rio, but the ref was distracted. And then Young hit the bridging O'Connor roll, which Backlund was famous for, and pinned Del Rio in 2:23 and gets the win, and we'll get the IC title match on Sunday.
I didn't realize that.
Neither did the commentators.
Yeah, I would have loved for the commentators to at least make some mention of that, or maybe some vignettes, of Backlund teaching,
training him. Well, they had their vignettes laid out for months,
and those vignettes were just. They told you by the end of those several weeks, you really learned nothing about this character and this tandem. So I get that they're trying to have Darren Young kind of be the fluke win guy, the guy who wins without really being good. He kind of just falls into like some good luck and wins his matches that way. But I still don't find him that interesting yet. I would like to hear Backlund speak a little bit more to kind of convey what the gimmick is all about. And we're not really getting that yet leading into the pay-per-view.
Well, Darren Young also got his lawyer to keep him and Bob Backlund together for the draft. Catch all of our podcasts daily up at FightNetwork.com. You can also subscribe to Live Audio Wrestling on iTunes and listen through the free Stitcher app. The second hour kicked off with John Cena coming out. He'll be on SportsCenter after the draft Tuesday night, and he plugs the draft as well as Battleground before he brings out Enzo and Cass. And Enzo comes out, and he had a lengthy promo, some great lines in here. He says that he does judge books by its cover because he doesn't have time to read a book, and he calls Gallows ugly and that the only time women open their mouth for Gallows is to yawn. He makes fun of AJ for his soccer mom haircut, and Carl is like Times New Roman font, as generic as they come. Always the label of death in WWE. And that says the only time they'll beat them is on the 35th of Neverwary, and if they want sympathy, grab a dictionary and look between spit and syphilis. And Cena says how Enzo's just coming out and spitting out punchlines, and Cass explains, yeah, that's what all Enzo does. That's his thing. And Cass compares the three of them to the Three Musketeers, the Three Tenors, Nirvana, Destiny's Child, Run DMC, and Wu-Tang, which Cena calls him on about Wu-Tang not being three members. They go to spell out soft when the club comes out, and Styles says how Cena is setting himself up for failure, teaming with Enzo and Cass. Carl says how the club has chemistry. Gallows notes how the club has spilt blood and sold out arenas all over the world. They call them scabs and say that tonight they're going to beat the three of them up, and they're also going to beat up the New Day, who then come out. They are all recovered from the beating at the compound last week. And they make a masturbation joke about the club always talking about what they want to beat. And then Woods says how the Wyatts would break most normal men, but they are not normal. And Woods mentions how he is a level 21 Pokemon Go trainer and part of Team Valor.
Yeah.
Have you downloaded it yet?
I have not, and I will not.
Oh, you won't. You're not ready to dedicate that kind of time to your schedule.
I know better. I really do know better. And I just know that, I mean, I probably wouldn't even be able to focus on whatever show that we're watching in wrestling. It's just something that's consumed everybody, and I want no part of it.
He starts listing off Pokemon characters with Enzo saying, how you doing? And then it gets into a New Day Rocks chant. The Wyatts come out, and this is our prelude for our 12-man tag, where you essentially got the majority of your best talkers out for a lengthy talking segment to precede this match.
Yeah. I wasn't a big fan of this. I thought Enzo came across well as usual, but it was just a little too much for me, okay? You had the two of them come out, do their thing. You had Cena come out and do a little thing. Then you had the New Day do their comedy. You even had the club do some of their comedy. By the end of it,
we didn't get Wyatt family comedy.
I mean, by the end of it, it just felt like, an amateur open mic night instead of, just get to the point. I want to see the match. It was just a little too long for me.
Boy. The New Day, John Cena, Enzo and Cass against Styles, Gallows, Anderson, and the Wyatts. Strowman was in at the beginning, and Big E tagged in Enzo, and Enzo immediately got knocked down, so he tagged in Cass, and we got the stare down of all stare downs. Big Cass and Braun Strowman.
It's a future title program right there.
Possible. Strowman slaps Cena off the apron. Everyone gets into brawl. They got the advantage on Kofi, and then Cena's in. Rowan is driving his fists into the side of his head. Bray is then beating down Cena after they go through a commercial break. Cena gets free to make the hot tag to Cass, who comes in with the Empire elbow to Styles. Kofi was in, hit a Hurricane Rana to Rowan. Everyone was getting involved at this point. Cass then ducked a springboard from Styles and hit him with the big boot. Then Gallows blocked the bada boom shakalaka. And Cena hit the AA to Gallows. Carl Anderson came in with a spine buster to Cena. And then Enzo came off the top with a DDT. Everyone is down. The Wyatts and New Day fought to the back. And then Enzo went for a clothesline. And Styles ducked, so Enzo nailed Cena. And it allowed AJ to capitalize, hit the Styles Clash, and pin Enzo and get the win.
Good match. I thought a very hot finish with a bunch of stacking finishers.
This went like 19 minutes.
Yeah.
It's long.
And with the
thing before, yeah, you were looking at probably 35, 40 minutes these guys were out here.
They casually mentioned that at the end of this week, the New Day will have been the longest reigning WWE Tag Team Champions of all time.
Of all time.
Well, we're talking about the
tag titles that were introduced in 2002.
The SmackDown
yes.
titles,
So
yes.
all time is a relative term in WWE history.
14 years. Yes.
So yes, that will be the new their new record, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Let's run with it.
Until they introduce new belts.
Yeah, I guess then that'll be new math for them. You can check out The Law's YouTube channel at youtube.com/liveaudiowrestling. Subscribe for all of your free videos, including Ask Away, interviews, and much more. Stephanie and Foley are chatting up Apollo Crews. And then they showed a pre-tape from earlier in the day with Seth Rollins walking into the empty arena and mentions coming in this way for all the Shield entrances and said that Ambrose and Reigns were pawns in his game. He kept Ambrose around to take all the beatings and Reigns to deliver them. And then when he was done, he cut them loose to become champion. He says how his knee caved under all the pressure of carrying the company. And he asks if Reigns has lost his edge over the last month and how the fans will accept him when he returns. He says Reigns will never be the same. He calls Ambrose a thief and a coward, and he's going to win the title tonight and prove he was always the man. Not the greatest promo in the world, but I like the setting and doing something different.
Visually, I thought it was really cool. It felt very old school, very intimate, and, it certainly stood out. I think he and Ambrose and Rollins really have kind of had to carry the weight of building this three-way without Roman Reigns around, and so they've had to find various creative ways to kind of, tell their stories, and I thought this was probably the highlight of the build-up for me.
Where do you think Reigns is going to get drafted on Tuesday night?
Where?
Like number-wise?
Top 5 for sure. I'd say maybe like 4.
Yeah.
No, actually, maybe even higher than that, but given kind of his condition and how kind of he's on the outs, yeah, I'd still say maybe 3, 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Foley's with Fandango and Tyler Breeze backstage. They're trying to teach him how to dance, but because of all his damage, he cannot move his hips. Shane walks up to him and doesn't understand why anyone would want to work with Stephanie. He gives it 6 months, and he says he heard rumors that Foley was hired for the crowd reaction and because Stephanie can control him. And Foley tells Shane that he's approaching this with his eyes open. He watched the rise of Stephanie and says he also sees passion inside of her and says that he has talent that he has to go scout and kind of blows off Shane here. He's just trying to stir stuff up with Foley.
Yeah. I mean, do you think we'll see kind of this relationship be a bit more antagonistic on Raw between Foley and Steph?
Yeah, I think you'll have a bit of that rather than the two on the same page.
Yeah.
Baron Corbin and Sin Cara were next. If you tuned into Facebook Live before Raw, you would have found out that the Lucha Dragons have agreed to split up. They did not get a lawyer to protect them in the draft.
Why wouldn't they show that here?
You got to go on Facebook Live. Your favorite.
Okay. Yeah, I love Facebook Live, yes.
There were stomps in the corner by Corbin. Sin Cara hit a suicide dive. They came back into the ring, and Corbin hit the end of days in 1 minute and 19 seconds. He continued to beat on Sin Cara. Kalisto came down for the save, and then Corbin went to leave, but then attacked Kalisto and left him laying as well. So probably a good time to call it a day for the Lucha Dragons, who were just utterly annihilated by one man here.
Yeah.
I guess, like Kalisto, you would figure this guy's got to be in that cruiserweight division. You would want him on Raw.
I would think so.
It's weird that they're putting the cruiserweight division on Raw. A, the live show. And B,
yeah, what's wrong with that?
Well, in the past, I mean, the Cruiserweight division, they wanted it on SmackDown. And I guess you're right. It doesn't really matter. They're both live shows, so that's a stupid point to make.
Both live shows.
But you also have the Bryan connection that I think is the natural, that here's the guy that's been scouting all of these guys to bring up.
Perhaps they want to give Cruiserweight fans a reason to watch Raw other than Daniel Bryan. Maybe they figure they're both the same crowd.
Well, there you go. You'll have the Cruiserweight division. Charlotte and Dana Brooke took on Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch. Of course, Sasha will have a mystery partner at the pay-per-view this Sunday. Charlotte immediately tags out as Sasha starts the match. Dana gets knocked off the apron by Sasha, and then Natalya shows up attacking Becky, and the bell gets called at 2:20 for the DQ. Charlotte and Dana are double-teaming Sasha, hits the natural selection, and they just pose over top of her. So no tease or reveal of who the partner is on Sunday. Maybe they'll announce it on Facebook Live.
Maybe. Do you expect it to be anyone from NXT?
I could see it being Nia Jax. If, in fact, she's drafted and she comes up as a babyface, possibly.
What about Bayley? Well, she's got a match. I guess.
She's set up at the next TakeOver special. You could do Bayley. It's possible. I don't know if she's going to get called up or not. We'll find out on Tuesday. Yeah. Bryan and Shane are with Kane backstage, and then we got Dean Ambrose doing a promo with the old Shield-style promo in the back.
Yeah, their webcam or...
Yes, and he did this himself. He was holding it up. Yeah. So, great.
Selfie.
Says he changed the course of history when he cashed in Money in the Bank, and says he will be champion after tonight and Sunday.
Rollins definitely, I thought, had the better promo. He had more time, went a little deeper.
This promo had about as much detail as the WWE statement they put out Friday after the Lesnar-USADA deal. Brock Lesnar has not competed since WrestleMania, and he will be returning on August 21st. Thanks. I was aware of both those facts. I was aware of this, too.
You could have tweeted this.
He plans to be the champion not only after tonight, but also on Sunday. I'm going to retain tonight, but I'll probably lose Sunday. Coming up Sunday night on The Law, live audio wrestling. Tune in at 11 p.m. Eastern Time for a full rundown of the WWE Battleground event with Jason Agnew and Dan the Mouth Labransky recapping the show and going over everything coming out of the WWE Draft. Plus, we'll chat with Dave Meltzer and more. It's The Law, Sunday night, 11 Eastern, and listen at liveaudiowrestling.com. Lana is out in camouflage to introduce Rusev, who came out, and most people probably couldn't see this match, or wish they didn't. Rusev and Sheamus took on Dolph Ziggler and Zack Ryder. 4 people that are all just kind of running in place, I would say. And Ziggler may be behind all 3 of these guys. Sheamus had the advantage on Ryder immediately. Ryder countered a vertical suplex. Rusev is yelling at the top of his lungs, "Tag me." Ziggler and Rusev come in. Ziggler kicks the knee, hits a famouser. Sheamus makes the save, and then Ryder sends Sheamus and himself to the floor with a clothesline. Ziggler gets dropped on the top rope, throat first, running boot, and accolade, and Rusev destroys Ziggler and gets the win in 3:48.
Very little here. I feel like this this Battleground pay-per-view that's coming up on Sunday is a total afterthought coming after this draft, unfortunately. And matches like Ryder versus Rusev, I think, suffer the most from that, where I barely remember that these two were having a program. And I think they've done a very poor job with Ryder, building him as a babyface heading into the match.
Yeah, I can't say this match has much steam going into it. Then we had a plug for Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton. This was the only mention of one Brock Lesnar on this show.
I'm surprised they even did this. Talk about, like, a crazy week. You know, you go from last week we were on the show talking about how
they didn't do enough with him,
promotable, and oh my God, all the leverage this guy has in contract negotiations, and today just complete 180, just like that.
Yeah, it's a tough deal with him because it's not public what was found in his system, what the next step is going to be, what Nevada's going to do, what USADA is going to do, but. We did get a statement from the New York State Athletic Commission, and it appears that there's not going to be much of an issue. There's not going to be an issue of him wrestling at SummerSlam. It's just simply that the WWE, they have to be licensed to run in the state, and they have to get a New York State licensed doctor to approve him, and it's only that he's medically cleared.
From a character perspective, though, I don't know if you can promote this guy as a man who conquered the UFC anymore. You know, his win.
This is the WWE way.
I'm saying, like, you can't even use that as a way to say.
I don't think they're going to bring up UFC.
You can't bring up UFC at all. You can't use all the value that they put. You know, we thought they gained at UFC 200. Now he's just that win is completely rendered illegitimate now.
Where do you think he goes in the draft?
I mean, great question. Because I mean, if you were asking me last week, I would say maybe number 1, maybe number 2. But
I think he could still go 1.
Yeah, but how do you? I thought even
ignoring it, they're not going to bring up you. You will never hear the word USADA on a WWE broadcast. You won't,
but don't you think the crowd might? I saw a sign at the beginning of the show that was promptly taken away.
Oh, what did it say?
It said, Brock Lesnar didn't take PEDs. PEDs took Brock Lesnar. And I only saw it for like 2 quick seconds, and I paused it and made sure I see it. But, I mean, I think they have to be slightly concerned that this crowd could hijack. Imagine a USADA chant.
No way.
Very chantable name.
You know, it's funny because you have similar situations in these tests with like Reigns and Lesnar. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you were to announce Reigns as your first overall pick, I think that entire arena would just boo.
Yes.
Lesnar, I don't sense that. I don't get that same thing.
Not as bad as Reigns because people don't like Reigns anyways. I think people will still cheer for Brock Lesnar.
So they showed this feature on Randy Orton showing him as a child with Andre the Giant, an amateur wrestling photo, and then we went into a bunch of different RKOs, and they plug his appearance on Sunday on the highlight reel with Jericho at Battleground because Jericho doesn't have a match on Sunday. He's just doing this. So
I might as well.
Yeah, the feature was okay.
I feel honestly, like, Battleground to me feels like, a bigger edition of Raw.
It kind of is. You're going to be going off the fumes of the draft, and it's the last meeting of a bunch of these people that are probably going different ways from the Shield three-way, Owens and Zayn. You're probably going to get a lot of those, just final matchups and wrapping it up. They plugged Cena hosting the ESPYs and showed his video package. I guess he is the mainstream darling now in the WWE for his contributions last week as opposed to Brock's. And they had Kathy Kelly on the red carpet interviewing various celebrities and WWE talent. And then Cole says how sports and entertainment will now change its focus to the draft. It's basically saying their focus is on the ESPYs and now everyone tunes into the draft.
Yes.
So
on ESPN.
I mean, they're going to do a very strong number, I think, on Tuesday night for this draft.
I think they promoted the draft very well.
Yeah, they've really hit it hard these 2 weeks going into it. Mick Foley was with the Ascension backstage, who essentially are just comedy at this point.
I think anybody who's being interrupted backstage talking to these general managers is essentially comedy.
Well, Connor was like describing what can be found in the wasteland, wherever the hell they're from. Death gimmick, unfortunately, for these guys. Brian interrupts him to speak with Foley. I was getting tired of all these authority figures and their interactions. Like, we got them for like 15 minutes to start the show and then a million segments. But this one was, I think, the best of the backstage ones. Brian says how he wants them to have a good working relationship and be sportsmen. Foley mentions how Brian's reaction dwarfed his tonight. And they make a bunch of TV ratings and social media jokes, and they're jabbing at each other in a joking way, noting they each have hot wives. Foley says that they both had... That's what they brought up. Yeah. They said they married above themselves. Foley says how they had the ability to outwork, outperform, and outlast everyone in their way. But Foley says, now you're in my way. And this is when they got serious. They said they never fought, but now they are going to fight, and let the games begin.
Seeing these two on screen, I don't think they necessarily have great chemistry as characters together because they are so similar. When you put them on opposing sides, something just doesn't necessarily feel right. But perhaps they don't need it because they might not interact all that much.
And then the main event, they left a lot of time at the end of the show for the WWE title match with Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. Who was at ringside? We had Shane and Brian and Stephanie and Foley, of course, if you are doing the drinking game. Rollins had the early advantage, and they went through a commercial break. JBL was putting over the CWC, and in particular, Kota Ibushi and Cedric Alexander. There was a sling blade by Rollins, a very subdued crowd at the beginning, but it certainly picked up as the match built.
It's just still weird to me to hear JBL mention Kota Ibushi on Raw.
Yes.
Bizarre.
Well, Cruiserweight division on Raw, he'll be calling his matches probably.
Yeah. Insane.
Rollins hit a powerbomb into the barricade and then followed up in the ring with a frog splash for a 2 count as they went to another commercial break. They came back. Rollins went for a buckle bomb, and then that was turned into a head scissors by Ambrose. Pedigree got blocked, and then Rollins went for a slingshot. Rollins hopped over and then hit a springboard knee and then missed with another frog splash coming off the top. Rollins then ducked a slingshot clothesline, hit a buckle bomb, but then Ambrose, in going down, hit the dirty deeds, goes for the cover. Rollins got his foot onto the bottom rope. Crowd was really hot at this point, I thought. Ambrose clears off the Spanish announce desk as the announcers flee into the crowd. They went into the WWE universe.
Thank you.
Rollins then comes off and avoids a splash attempt. Rollins then catches him off the top, hits a pedigree for a near fall, and Ambrose eventually shoves Rollins off the turnbuckle and knocks him into the referee, who goes down but made a very quick recovery because Rollins hit a superplex and both had the other pinned, and the referee counted 3. We got the double pin. This thing went just over 24 minutes, and we had the disputed finish where Stephanie thought that Rollins had won and Shane thought that Dean Ambrose had won. And then it ended with Stephanie getting on the microphone, announcing that Seth Rollins was the new champion. Rollins left with the title. So if you were just watching the TV version, you were left to believe Rollins is the new champion. But on the network and in the arena right afterwards, they announced that it was a draw and Dean Ambrose is still the champion.
Oh, do you think they went off air a little early, or was this the intent?
Well, I mean, it aired on the network, so I don't know if that was designed, but it was. If you were just watching the show, you went off the air thinking at worst it was a disputed finish, or Rollins may have won the title.
I got the impression it was just disputed, and I mean, I don't know how well. I feel like this kind of led into SmackDown well. The match itself was a very good match. It didn't really have the feel of a championship match, and I think that's because of the lack of promotion with only 1 week, and also because there's a pay-per-view coming up in 7 days. So the result felt relatively inconsequential. The double pin, I'm curious to see how they'll kind of have that play into the pay-per-view match on Sunday.
Yeah, so I thought it was a good match. It definitely picked up towards, I think, the final 10 minutes of the match.
How did
Yeah, definitely. Review Away moves to Friday this week. Wei Ting and I will be back, and we are reviewing the brand new Scott Hall documentary, Living on a Razor's Edge, the Scott Hall story that the WWE has just released with a full look at the career of Scott Hall and much more. This Friday, it's Review Away at liveaudiowrestling.com. And before we wrap up here, do you want to hear what the Battleground card is, Way?
Yeah.
All right. We've got, in the main event, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins. I think pretty safe to assume that these three will not be staying on the same brand. You would have to be splitting these ones up.
I think Ambrose and Rollins for sure are probably getting split up.
Yeah, I think you could definitely see Reigns and Rollins together because that's still a feud. And the fact they did this match on Raw with Ambrose and Rollins, I think that was kind of telling that those two are probably going on separate shows. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, I think that's a lock. They're going on separate shows, regardless of which one goes where. John Cena, Enzo, and Cass against AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson. I really hope they don't break up the club. I think that those three, especially Carl getting the generic label in his promo, this guy, I worry about him on his own. If that was
well, aren't they one of the teams that have to stick together?
Are they listed as a team together?
I believe so.
Let's look it up here. I have the teams here. Teams are Breezango, Enzo and Cass, Gallows and Anderson. You're right. So they are together. So I'm sure all three will stay together. Becky Lynch against Natalya. The Miz against Darren Young. Will we have a title switch, Way?
Miz and Darren Young. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Sure. Rusev and Zack Ryder. Will we get a title change?
Again, no, I don't think so.
Do you care?
No.
Okay. The New Day against the Wyatt family, 6-man tag. I almost think it's a given the Wyatts are getting broken up. I can't see all three. They're not being kept together.
Which member is being broken up?
I could see...
Of those three.
I could see Strowman being separate, and they finally give this guy their long-awaited push on this guy on one of the brands. And then, you could have Bray and Strowman go to one, or even Bray's on his own, and Rowan and Strowman go to another brand. But I think they're getting split. I don't think you're keeping all of them together. And Harper isn't even listed.
Yeah.
And it's a 6-man match. So, and then Sasha and to be announced against Charlotte and Dana Brooke. That's your entire lineup for. What's your prediction for the partner?
The partner, I believe it'll be somebody from NXT, whether it be a Nia Jax or a Bayley. I feel like anybody else would be a little disappointing. Who else is there? Paige?
Alexa Bliss.
I think those are kind of
Deonna Purrazzo.
No, I don't think so. I'm going with Bayley.
Bayley.
That's my pick.
That is your pick. Who would you like to see from NXT get called up?
Obviously, the choices I think everybody's suggesting are Finn Balor, American Alpha. Joe and Nakamura, I think, are sort of the options that they haven't excluded, but if they're eligible, you would have to figure that they have to.
I was surprised there was no announcement about that on Monday of whether the champion is excluded or not, because it makes no sense if Joe doesn't get drafted tomorrow.
Nor Asuka.
Yeah, exactly. I thought there was a chance tonight you could just say, hey, it's Joe and Nakamura take over, and it's Asuka Bayley, and therefore they are locked in. They are not eligible, those four. Because I could see tomorrow none of those four being drafted. Bayley possible, and the other three I don't see being drafted. And you should have some explanation. It just makes no sense why you wouldn't draft the two champions. Yeah. So there you have it. That is the lineup for Battleground, and the draft is coming up on Tuesday. Now, myself and Way, we will be back much earlier than just Review Away this week. Why don't you tell everybody, Way, where they can hear us Tuesday night?
Tuesday night, we are going to be reviewing said episode of the WWE Draft on the very first edition of SmackDown Live.
And let's get this correct. We have a 1-hour pre-show, the 2-hour SmackDown, which will have simultaneously their Draft Center coverage on the network. Mm-hmm. They're creating their own head-to-head competition. And then there is a 1-hour post-show, which I think guaranteed we're going to have to watch because I guarantee you there will be picks.
I didn't guarantee that. You
okay. So you're done at 10. You are contracted for 2 hours.
I wasn't even going to watch the pre-show, but man.
Well, I don't think the pre-show is necessary.
What about that second screen thing? I got to do that too? I'll do it. I'll watch everything.
You're literally going to have your own people analyzing your own program.
All right, fine. Anyway, so we'll be talking about all of that on the very first edition of Review a SmackDown Live.
Review a SmackDown Live.
Which will be taped and uploaded later that night. But watch out for that Tuesday night / Wednesday morning at liveaudiowrestling.com.
Yes, so you can catch that, yes, late Tuesday night. Review Away is going to be on Friday, which is going to be its new home. And Fridays, we are now going to alternate between Review Away and Bauer and Pollock. They are now going to be bi-weekly shows each Friday at liveaudiowrestling.com. And you can subscribe on iTunes as well. Just search for Live Audio Wrestling. And of course, you can watch it here on Fight Network each and every Tuesday at 11 a.m. and 7 Eastern. For Wei Ting, I'm John Pollock, and we'll speak with you Tuesday night after the draft.